Hello everyone. On the 1st of August, we are going to have an Aquarius full moon. And full moons are always about fulfillment, completion, fruition. This particular one is an interesting dichotomy because Leo, the Leo sun, is the ruler, is the sovereign, and Aquarius, of course, is the rebel or the someone who is going to overthrow the power of the king. So that's the dichotomy. And Uranus plays a very important role in this particular chart. I'm going to show you in a minute. This is for the London chart. It's at 1931. So you won't see the moon rise because it's still quite bright on August the 1st. You need to wait another probably 1.5 hours before the moon actually comes up. So you won't actually notice the full moon rising. But we have a Capricorn ascendant in this particular chart, and Uranus, the chart ruler, the moon ruler, is on the IC, kind of showing what is going to be disrupted. And unfortunately, Uranus always has this ability or task. It usually stays in one sign for 7 years and disrupts whatever is linked to that particular sign. In Taurus, it's our money, our well-being, our harmony, our security, and also our abilities, how to create money, security, and stability. That is what's going to be disrupted. And if you take a look at the last 4 years, that's exactly what was happening during the COVID and all those mandates, totally against humanity and against human beings. And now the war. And you guys, you English are so lucky because you are no longer part of this monkey cage that we are in, which I call the European Union, of course. It's amazing how the leaders of the Union are not dealing with the people, with their subjects, so to speak. No, they are pouring money into a country which is at war and which has no chance to win, and also which is not a member state. I mean, it's outrageous, and it's really disgusting as well. So, what are the highlights of the this full moon? Yeah, Mars and Pallas Athena are still kind of conjunct, but they are separating. So you still have wisdom and also protection. And war, full-blown bloody war, kind of intertwined. There's also a Mercury trans-Pluto conjunction. It is separating, but it's still there. Mercury at the moment is quite fast. Its daily travel is 1.5 degrees. The average is 1 degree only. And why is this interesting? Because if we think about, if we look at what celestial objects are linked to thinking and communication and understanding, then these are the levels we have. We have Mercury, which is everyday discourse, human discourse that we produce every day. Pallas Athena is a bit more than Mercury because it gives you the feminine side and also wisdom. So Mercury is just chatting, but Pallas Athena conveys truth and wisdom. So those are the ordinary level. And one step further up is Uranus, the ruler of this particular full moon, which is flashes of inspiration, flashes of understanding. It's the higher octave of Mercury. And above Uranus is trans-Pluto, which is channeling. So the difference is between the two is that whenever you have an issue, a problem, then you might receive flashes of inspiration, understanding through these flashes. It's really like a lightning. But with trans-Pluto, you need to make the effort. You need to go up there, one step higher up there, and understand and download what's up there, and also trying to understand as well. So those are the 3 levels. And in this particular chart, you have Mercury, which is the lowest, and trans-Pluto, which is the highest there in a conjunction. So you can actually make sense. You will be able to make sense of a lot of things if you do your work industriously and diligently, and you are willing to go up there and channel whatever is up there. There's also a Black Moon Lilith Venus doubly applying conjunction, in the middle of which is the vertex, which is the point of no free will. Venus, of course, is retrograde at the moment, and Lilith is the Black Moon Lilith, which is the third turning point of the Lilith myth. So there are two very strong women trying to come together in Leo, which is the sign of ruling, of sovereignty, but vertex is kind of separating them, and vertex is not a good sign here because it means that something is dividing these two feminine energies, which could be very, very successful if they were intertwined. This is only in the London chart, by the way. Quite interestingly, in the Hungarian chart, it was between Pallas Athena and Mars that you had the vertex. That is a moving point. It depends on where you look at the chart. And then the asteroid Lilith just moved into, I didn't cross it, but anyhow, it just moved into Libra. It's just at the very beginning of Libra. And asteroid Lilith denotes revolt against injustice. And Libra 0 degree is 1 degree is where the so-called supergalactic center is. And this denotes the karmic dilemma of nothing is ever enough. So yes, there will be rewards against injustice. This is what I think. Although I'm recording this much earlier, and I won't be able to actually see the world situation. So you might write to me in a comment what happened during this particular full moon, but it's going to be hot in many sense. Anyhow, Dark Moon Lilith, which is the middle archetype of the Lilith myth, it's the second turning point where Lilith accepts the curse of Yahweh, is on Juno. And Juno denotes committed, serious relationships. And to me, this means, and again, the dichotomy between the ruler, the sovereign, and its rebel, Leo and Aquarius, kind of foretells that, if you have a committed relationship, sometimes you need to give in, sometimes you need to accept, of course, what the other wants, but sometimes you need to keep your sovereignty. You need to keep what is really duly yours, and just say that, okay, I'm not going to bend, and I want to keep whatever is mine. So that's kind of what it means. The Vesta Astrea conjunction is still very tight, focusing on karma breaking. This is up till November. You have a chance to do that, and you will need to for sure. And this very interesting midpoint structure, which is actually a lot more than just these two, but it's always easier to see a midpoint structure because you kind of, your eyes will be trained to see, okay, that, all right, this is a celestial object, and there are two others which are kind of at equal distance from the one in the middle, and they are not conjunctions because they are too wide. It's easier to see if it's a triple conjunction. You don't need to treat it as a midpoint structure. But in this case, for instance, these are not conjunctions. These are not conjunctions in any sense. So we need to understand the midpoint, what it means. And I will explain it to you in a second. Here it is. So these are only the direct midpoints to Uranus. There are other indirect midpoints, which I'm not going to elaborate now. But first of all, you might remember that if you have two celestial objects, they can come into relationship in three different ways. Number one, when they are in each other's signs. This is a mutual reception. They are ruling each other, kind of. It may be very disruptive and it may be very nice. I mean, there are many examples for both. I'm not going to say anything, but that's one thing, one potential. The second potential, which is the most common, is to have an aspect between the two. And it's usually the aspect itself, how it is going to work, how it is going to function in someone's chart. For instance, if you have a moon Venus aspect, it's brilliant, because even the bad ones, even the square, which could show that, for instance, you might have problems integrating your two feminine sides, the mothering instinct and the lover. It's two nice planets that certainly can learn how to work with each other. But if the moon has an aspect to Saturn, then even the trine can give you impulses to kind of sometimes fall into depression or just feeling under the weather, something like that. But the square definitely will make you depressed. Even though you, of course, you can also learn how to come out of that as well. So it usually depends on the aspect. Although with this particular case, with the Sun and Saturn, quite interestingly, it works in a bit differently. I'm going to explain to you in a minute. But let's go back to midpoints. So what happens here is that's the third potential, that there are two celestial objects. They are not in any aspect. They are not in mutual reception, but a third planet can actually kind of join them by staying in between. So this is exactly what's happening in this case. Uranus is at the midpoint of Saturn and Jupiter. It's also at the midpoint of Sun, Saturn, and it's also at the midpoint of Mercury and the Moon. Yes, there is a Mercury-Saturn opposition, and yes, there is a Sun-Moon opposition. It's the full moon after all, but we are not interested in that, because I'm going to show you the midpoint structures here. Actually, let's go back first. I'm going to explain it to you, and then we are going to see it. But anyhow, so this is the midpoint structure that that need to be elaborated. So let's take a look. And what's here important is that any midpoint structure can be best understood and delineated if you take the very best, very useful and stable meaning of the celestial objects. And in this case, for instance, Sedna denotes creation through dissection, and Jupiter denotes luck and expansion. So Uranus is at the midpoint, suggesting that you may need to make changes in order to be able to create new stuff in an enthusiastic way. There's also a Sun-Saturn midpoint. And of course, the Sun-Saturn aspects are not always very easy. But here, I always say this to many of my clients, and also this is what I teach because I believe it. With Saturn, it's not really the aspect that is the definitive way to interpret it, but your attitude towards duty, towards hardship, towards borders and stability. Even a Sun-Saturn square could mean that you are putting a lot of energy and effort into your life and you're going to be very successful. Yes, it could mean that you have a lot more hardships than others. Yes, it could mean that your burdens are much bigger than that of the others. But still, if you do your homework and if you pay attention, a Sun-Saturn square, even a square, could mean you are very successful. And Uranus at the midpoint means that make the necessary changes in order to become successful by persevering, by being there, by doing your duty. And the Sun-Mercury midpoint, of course, Moon-Mercury. Moon-Mercury is, of course, the family nucleus. It's very interesting to me. If you take a look at Marxists and the radical left in general, it has always been their agenda to do away with families, because for instance, in the Soviet Union, Lenin said that we want, because the family is just a bourgeois invention, we need to do away with it, and the state will provide for the children, the state will raise the children. Of course, because this is how you can raise droids and idiots. And this has always been somehow the duty of the radical left to do away with families. And they are very successful, unfortunately. I mean, there are so many dysfunctional families, there are so many single parent families that really we can do, but now they kind of achieved it. Whereas if you see a strong family structure, those are always much better off than single individuals. And Mercury moon is really about the mother and the child on the one hand, but also Mercury is your rational thinking and the moon is your feeling. So actually change Uranus, how you feel and how you think in order to survive what is coming towards us. Anyhow, so this is how we can actually look at the structures themselves. As you can see, there's no aspect between the Sun and Saturn. Even, I mean, you could argue that there's a quincunx, but it is really too wide because I allow only 3 degrees to it. And it's slightly more, but there's definitely no aspect between Mercury and the moon. But still, because they are at the midpoint of Uranus, you can see that they are perpendicular to the opposition point. This is how it is being said. Yes, there are 2 biseptiles, so it's really a structure kind of, because there are 2 oppositions and bisextile, but we are going to look, I mean, concentrate really on the midpoint things, just as I explained it to you. And let's take a look at the transcendental celestial objects, which, okay, yes, I'm timing myself because I'm again talking too much. I apologize, but there's a lot of things that I can teach you with this video. Anyhow, on the Sun, you have Gawain, the knight in shining armor, which we are going to need, and Azalus Australis, which is the southern donkey in the constellation Cancer. On the Moon, you have Titania, and Titania is one of the so-called Atlantean asteroids. And yes, we are at the verge of making the same mistake as we did 12,000 years ago. We can again totally disrupt what we have. Mankind was never so successful. Mankind in itself, the people in itself, especially in Europe, never had such a nice flowing good life. And we are at the verge of doing away with it. And Titania on the Moon suggests that we should go back and understand what is good for us and what is helping us. On Mercury, you have 4 asteroids: Eos, the dawn; Hebe, the goddess of youth; and 2 philosophers, Plotinus and Boetius. Plotinus is a Neoplatonist, and Boetius was a Roman consul and philosopher. And I believe he was born in 524 AD, so 1500 years ago. And he was a very well-read philosopher. You can still read him, so he is quite interesting. On Saturn, you have Gong and Deneb Adige. Gong is this Chinese monster who has this huge iron head that is and copper forehead, and he actually in one of his fights he is making a huge hole in the firmament of the cosmos and causing a lot of disruption. That is where we are. We are at the verge of huge cosmic disruption. But Deneb Adige is the alpha star of the Cygnus, and it's one of the shaman stars. So we have the tool to repair whatever is being cooked for us. On Jupiter, you have Albion, which is a very interesting TNO, or well, it's actually a TNO, not a proper centaur. So it's an outer Kuiper belt object. It was one of the first Kuiper belt object that was discovered after Chiron. way back in 91, I believe, but it was not named until 2020. So for like 30 years, it didn't get any name. It was named QB10, which meant Kuiper Belt Object number 1. This is how he was referred to. And then finally, he was named after Albion, who is some sort of forefather of the British Isles, who some sort of Adam Cadmon in William Blake's philosophy or works. And he cuts himself into 4 in order to create the 4 aspects of the human nature. And yes, it is dissection, but Sedna is being dissected by his own father. So it's not a voluntary dissection, whereas Albion is dissecting himself in order to create something new. And I keep saying that this particular celestial object has been quite prominent during the Ukrainian war. And as I see it now, it's probably the conflict will be going on. It's going to be a frozen conflict, just like the Korean War, maybe for decades, maybe for just years. And Ukraine will be dissected, definitely dissected. It's not going to be, it never was a proper country, sorry. Take a look at history. History doesn't lie. Historians lie, but history doesn't. So the name Ukraine means land in the west, or land at the border, a borderland. So it was a borderland of Russia. I know it is painful, but that's what it is. So and then we have 2 fixed stars, Almach and Menkar, which I explained a couple of times. Almach is the feminine energy, and Menkar is the subconscious emerging and understanding stuff. On Uranus, which actually was on the IC in this particular chart, you have Hephaestus, who is the goldsmith of the gods, who is lame, but at the same time, what he creates is always perfect. So this need to striving for perfection is there. And on Sedna, we have Aristoteles, another thinker, more Somnus, who is death and sleep. And this particular TNO was very prominent during the pandemic. So I firmly believe that they are working already on the next batch. And the Pleiades, and if you watch my previous video, I explained how many, like 9 or 10 or 11, there are 9 or 10 or 11 stars right there on this particular degree, all the Pleiades and a couple of other ones. And I even showed you how we can't really say conjunction, we must say alignment, because there are certain stars that a planet can never be conjunct because they're not on the ecliptic, not on the zodiac, but somewhere up north or down south. And we have 2 very tight, very exact, so-called very tense trapezes. What is a very tense trapeze? First of all, trapeze is always the stage where you need to step up and you need to tell what you want. You need to give your ideas or your knowledge or your art. You need to perform. Now, we can have a tense trapeze if there are squares. For instance, a typical one is where the 2 sides are squares. And this one is interesting because all its participating aspects are tense, either squares or semi-squares or sesquiquadrates. And there are 2 of them intertwined. You can see them. So one is here with Mars, Pluto, sesquiquadrate, and the top is the North Node, Astrea, 45 degrees semi-squared. So that's one. And it means that Mars Pluto is always about a huge tension. It's about violence. There's 2 squares. Out of the 2 squares, one is part of the karmic cage that has been there and will be there for quite a while. And the other square is the Mars Astrea. So karma breaking through conflict. And the top, of course, means that we need to change or transform our destiny. And again, the 2 inner sides are also sesquiquadrates. So there's a great tension in this. And the other one is here. It's the Pluto Astrea sesquiquadrate. Here's the two squares on the other side of the karmic cage, Pluto South Node, and then Mars, Astrea, and also, and then the top is Mars and South Node, which means that we need to concentrate on how to fight for what used to be ours, what we learned from previous incarnations, South Node. And there's also Thor's hammer, actually. You can check how it works. But here are the aspects which are not actually there. So it's quite interesting because when you have so many conjunctions, of course, the conjunctions are kind of moving these objects into the configuration. But here are the distances, and that's why you need to be careful. Pluto Pallas Athena is 139 degrees, way too wide for a sesquiquadrate. The Pluto Aries square is kind of there too. It's a little bit wide for my taste, but especially wide for a configuration, because with the configuration you need to use 2 degrees and 1.5 if it's not a radiating object like the nodal axis or any of the angles. So 86 degrees, yes, it is a square, but it is not really making the configuration. What is making the configuration is the Pluto North Node square. And there's also a South Node, Vesta, not yet sesquiquadrate, because for a sesquiquadrate, the orb is 2 degrees, and this is only 132. And with the Aries Vesta focusing on disruption, the distance is 50 degrees, which is almost a septile. For the septile, septile is 1/7 of a circle, and it's mysticism, and it's 51 degrees and 27. So it's almost, you can actually say that this is a septile. So, and it's focusing on disruption. So this is the energy pattern of the full moon. And as I said, I hope you understood it quite well. Uranus plays a crucial part in this particular chart with its midpoints and the potentials these midpoints are providing. Thank you for listening, and happy full moon. Bye-bye.